All right, I think you're live now.
Excellent. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 55 of Bank to the Future Live. Today, we got a special guest, which is the CEO and founder of Unocoin, Sathvik, which is the largest exchange, Bitcoin exchange in India. I believe the first, maybe Sathvik can correct me, but also been through a really interesting journey, which we'd like to share with everybody in this special broadcast of episode 55. So just a bit of housekeeping. If you want to ask any questions, then please feel free to use the live chat. YouTube really likes it when you like this video, share this video. It helps us get more viewers onto this video, so we'd really appreciate that. And if you also want to ask any questions on our Twitter, you can use hashtag BFLive. Or you can head over to our Telegram group, which is at BF_token. That was a Telegram group we set up when we were launching our token, and it's kind of stuck as our community place on Telegram. But yeah, or you can use the live chat here on YouTube, or if you're watching the recording, feel free to add anything in the comments, and we'll try and pick that up in future episodes of Bank to the Future Live. So thank you very much for joining us, Sathvik. Where are you actually joining us from now in India?
Yeah, I'm from Bangalore right now.
Awesome. Okay. So for those of you that are not familiar with, for those of people that are not familiar with Unocoin, maybe you could give us a bit of background on the company, to give our background and how it connects with Bank to the Future. I think it was way back in either 2014 or 2015, I can't quite remember. We, Max Kaiser, myself, and Bitcoin Capital One were looking for global exposure to the companies that were bringing Bitcoin to the masses in different regions. And we did an analysis on the different regions and countries where Bitcoin was starting to get traction. And we really took an investment thesis that Bitcoin would be really, really important and eventually could get really big mass adoption in India. Our original thinking was that it's obviously a very, very large population, the second largest population in the world. It's also the largest population of gold holders in the world. So at the time, there was a lot of talk around the relationship between Bitcoin and gold. And many of the original gold community were starting to look at Bitcoin as an alternative asset class, thinking of it more like digital gold. So one of our theories was that, in India, many people might be more skeptical with banking, but they really believe in the value of holding your own asset in gold. And so that was another part of our thinking. It's also, from our research, a very IT literate population. Obviously, a billion odd people is obviously split into many, many different demographics, but a lot of technology is built in India. So we thought that there would be a percentage of the population that would really naturally go into Bitcoin from all of these different things. So Sathvik was actually let's pass over to him at this stage, but I believe you were one of the very first people to start attending meetup groups and evangelizing for Bitcoin in India. So why don't you give us the backstory of like the early days and where it went next?
Yeah, sure. I think after I did my MBA in University of Melbourne in the year 2008, I got into a partnership firm with my brother called Venture Next, where I was offering custom scripting services in a virtual world called Second Life. Okay, so it's like a 3D world where as soon as you log in, you see yourself as an avatar, and then you can build things, you can write the scripts, etc. So what I was doing there was to create the custom scripting services, write the custom scripts for businesses in Second Life. So what do I mean by that is, let's say if someone is constructing a home there, I was creating automation system for them. If someone is constructing a game, then I would make the game to work using the scripts. So the way we earn money in Second Life is through a a closed loop currency called Linden dollars, and about 250 Linden dollars is equivalent to $1 American. And because I live in India, the only option that was available to me to get the money to India was through PayPal. So as soon as the money hits PayPal, they were charging about 3.9% transaction fees, and now they convert the remaining money to Indian rupees. They were also charging about 3% of the conversion fees. So I kind of used to lose about 7% of the money for about 4 years. It significantly started to add up, and that is what made me to look at alternatives of how the transaction can be made more frictionless and more cost effective. And that made me stumble upon Bitcoin in the year 2012 and 13. So then I was looking at what exactly is happening in the Bitcoin space in India. That was very, very, very little that was happening. There was one meetup there in the entire India that was getting organized in Bangalore, usually on every weekend. When I went there, that's where I met actually the other co-founders for Unocoin. So when I'm talking about the year 2013, you would also understand that the price of Bitcoin has gone up from $16 to about $1,050. So that was the kind of price swing we saw in 2013. And like how the price of the Bitcoin went up, similarly, the more and more people started coming to the meetups, which was happening every weekend. So in one of the few meetups, we have seen as much as 150 people. It is like a small conference by itself, right? So which were getting organized in restaurants and hotels. So yeah, at that point of time, we could talk great things about the Bitcoin and the technology and how the blockchain works behind the scenes, etc. But people didn't have an option. Whoever want to put their hands on top of Bitcoin. So US has say Coinbase, and in Japan there was Mt. Gox, and in Europe there was Bitstamp. But in India there was no such. Some cash in their pocket, thinking someone else who will come for the meetup will have some Bitcoin where they can do some exchange at the meetup place. And to me and few others, it felt like very, very insecure and not a good way of doing the transaction. And we felt that to be a business opportunity, which gave us an idea that we should create something like Coinbase, but for India. So yeah, that was gave rise to the idea of the fact that we want to put together a platform for trading cryptocurrencies in India. So because of a previous business, I had some development team with me already. So we took about 3-4 months to put the trading platform live. So in December 2013, on 17th of December 2013, we organized the Asia's first Bitcoin conference in Bangalore, and that is where we also did launch Unocoin as the platform where people can start buying and selling by using by sending the money through the bank account and be able to do that this way. Yeah, that's how eventually that led for me to start Unocoin.
So they were most people were in the original meetups. People were turning up with like rucksacks of Indian rupees and trading and buying Bitcoin. I do remember the early days in New York and London when. I've forgotten the name of it. Someone can probably remember the trivia, but we used to have this, where they would, it was Satoshi Square or something like that. I can't, where we used to meet up, and there would be like it was Adam Clary, I remember now, but it's all going back in the days. And he used to organize these where people would turn up with cash, and then they'd have you'd do you scan your QR code, and you'd have your Bitcoin wallet, and everybody would trade like it was on the old days of the New York Stock Exchange or London Stock Exchange. You're bringing it all back now. So originally everyone was doing it for cash. Interestingly, you said you started with Linden dollars. I do remember covering Linden dollars in my book, Bank to the Future. And so that was pegged to the dollar, right? The virtual dollars.
More or less, it's little varies, but it's somewhere around 250 to 60. Linden dollars, American dollar. It continues to be the same way even now.
Yeah. And I remember like these interesting markets opened up where you had services. Well, one of them has just recently closed down, like Purse.io, where people were actually trading Bitcoin for things like Amazon credits and, almost like Amazon gift cards became part of the market. Was that one of the markets you were seeing in the early days in India? Was Were these, or was it all cash and Indian rupees bank wire?
It was only the cash and between Indian rupees to the Bitcoin, because like what extent we had access to the market. But actually, the first Bitcoin I tried putting hands on was through a exchange called Virwox, VIRWOX. So that is where people can convert their Linden dollars to American dollar and American dollar to Linden dollar. So they also added Bitcoin as one of the options, as one of the currencies there. So that made me to put my first hand on Bitcoin through that particular Virwox. It is still, even now it exists, I guess. I haven't really checked, but yeah. So it was in 2012 and 13. That's what it maybe do with it.
Okay. So when did the exchange end up launching?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
When did you launch the Unocoin exchange? When did you first open it?
We launched in 2013, December. So we launched it in a conference that was also organized by us. So that was actually like first conference in the entire Asia to do anything with cryptocurrency or blockchain.
Okay, awesome. And then, so walk me through like the adoption curve in those early days. Was there enough interest in those early days to create like sufficient liquidity for the Indian rupee to Bitcoin, or what was it like, that adoption curve over time?
Yeah. So see, I am from a city called Tumkur. I'm not from a city which is a Bangalore by itself. So the cost of living is like I think 1/5 of what it is in even Bangalore. So what I was paying my employees, my developers, was as little as about $150 a month. That was a kind of cost I was paying. But for that kind of expenses, whatever revenue we were making was kind of sufficient, more or less, because at that point of time, the price of Bitcoin was about 50 to 60,000 rupees, which is like $800 or so. And we on every day we used to transact about 5 or 8 or 10 Bitcoins. So that's the kind of thing that we have seen in the first complete 1 year at least. So yeah, the whatever 3% transaction fees, that's what we had initially when we started our platform. So that kind of money was quite sufficient to make our organization keep growing. But just after about 8 months, there was a capital infusion done by Barry Silber's digital currency group. So that added up to giving better opportunities for us to move to Bangalore, then have the better developer community, get the better development community here, and continue growing the platform. But by the time Barry invested, it was like 8 months, and we had close to about 4,000 customers, I guess. So that's pretty much, and 4,000 customers like who have shown interest and have signed up using the verified email ID, but the number of KYC verified customers was somewhere around 400, 500. That's pretty much where we started it at. But then, yeah, we've come a long way till then, since then.
Yeah. So I remember there were like very few investors in the industry. We put a roundup on Bank to the Future. Bitcoin Capital One invested. And then you also had a digital currency group. Were there any other notable investors in that round?
Actually, the first round we raised, it was only Barry Silbert. So that was in 2014. But so in the second round, which we did put together.
So Barry.
So the second round is when the Bank to the Future only invested the second round of funding, which we call it as Series A. So that was a $2 million raise. So that is when you guys did launch us on your platform to get the crowdfund. So then we had Bloom Ventures, which is like one of the very well-known VCs within India, but they only invest in the Indian ecosystem right now. And then we have Funders Club from US, so they are also quite well known. And then there are various angels, and we have one investor from China as well. And then we had Dream Incubator, so they are from Japan. So they also invested about $250,000 each. So
yeah. So one other thing I really liked about Unocoin that you guys did better than most of our portfolio companies is you consistently sent us those quarterly updates. So we always saw, how much you were spending on marketing, how much your user base was growing. And it just looked like a very well organized run shop, and the investor relations were really great, and something that we actually use as we try and emulate what Unocoin did for many of our other companies that are less good at giving those investor updates. But you've always been a consistent player. What I think where that became really, really useful was it was great when you were going through this ginormous growth curve. Users were really growing. Unocoin was becoming a household brand across India in the Bitcoin space. And it was great to see all that. But where I think the investor updates became really useful is when Unocoin started to hit some roadblocks and some challenges.
Yep.
And therefore we were, some of our companies, when they hit these roadblocks, they kind of go silent because they think that they're scared to update their investors on some of the really bad things that might be coming through. But with Unocoin, we always had complete transparency on that. And therefore it always gave us the opportunity to, try and see how us as investors can help and support. And you were always very forward in being transparent with information and requesting help wherever help was needed. So maybe you could walk us through to the peak of where Unocoin and what levels of traction you were getting, what type of volume, what type of users were signing up to Unocoin. And then maybe take us through to the first real major roadblock where the business got turned upside down.
Yeah. So when we started Unocoin, there were already exchanges like Mt. Gox and Bitstamp. But the bid and ask us and try to say there is matching engine which is matching the prices. But for Indians, the first thing we will have the difficulty is even to explain what is Bitcoin, right? So the moment what is Bitcoin becomes very difficult for people, like you have talked about, say, open source nature of it, you should talk about decentralized nature of it, and everything is already complicated. At that time, if we just make the platform as well complicated, because there is not many traders in India already, as well as very, very less number of traders and very less people know about Bitcoin. So we kept, initially we kept the platform to be very, very simple. So where if you will have INR balance using that with single click of a button, you buy Bitcoin at a price that is set by us. And then if you want to sell it, there is another price at which you can just sell it and get the money to the bank account. So that's pretty much all it was. But then after that, we started providing the merchant gateway for online merchants so that they can start accepting Bitcoin as a mode of payment. And then we had physical stores, right? So who also wanted some kind of solution. So we built up mobile apps for them. Which we call it as merchant POS, through which it can be installed on Android and iOS phone, and using which the brick and mortar physical store merchants can start accepting Bitcoin as a mode of payment. And we used to provide them a 30 minutes of lock-in time and 2 hours of settlement time. So it was really working good. We had up to 2,000 merchants who signed up with us. So there were books and gifts and CDs and air tickets, bus tickets, and server space and gift vouchers. So there are so many things that was available in India by paying through Bitcoin because of the merchant gateway provided by us. So then one of the other challenges we faced within India is a lot of Indians were very were very apprehensive of the price movements in Bitcoin. So today we see 5 or 10%, one of the really bad days with maybe 10% drop, but we have seen up to 40%, 50% drop in a single day, right? So during that time, it was, no investor or no buyer would really go forward and try to take a huge bet when they are significantly investing into buying these kinds of assets. So we built up something called systematic buying plan for them, where our customers could cost average the price of Bitcoin either daily, weekly, or monthly basis, so that they are not buying all the Bitcoin at once. They have to just do one kind of settings on the platform, and it keeps on buying in that same frequency. It's in bits and pieces. So then, how I was kind of freelancer before Unocoin, it was like with these, there are so many other freelancers in India, right? So it's known for freelancing. So for these people, same issue that they lose a of the money to get money to India, and because of which a lot of them are looking at the option of Bitcoin to get it. But because the employer who have got those freelancers working is usually like United States employers, right? So due to the time difference, when the employer sends the Bitcoin to this freelancer, and by the time he wakes up, which could be about 6 or 8 hours, so there is significant amount of volatility risk he was taking. So we built up a new feature for them saying, okay, this is called auto sell feature. This will generate a unique address for you, and any Bitcoin that goes into that address, it will be immediately sold without even asking that particular owner. So then what it essentially did was those addresses were given to those employers, and they sent Bitcoin, and it was sold at the same price. So there is no volatility risk. And within 2 hours, the money was getting credited to the bank account of those freelancers. So which means by the time the freelancer wakes up, he just have the money in the bank account already, right? So these are the kind of solutions we kind of try to build, try to address different pain points of various sectors, of various types of customers. We had various merchants we had. And then I think in 2017, by 2017, we kind of understood that there is a lot of customers who are trying to buy Bitcoin with us and then sending it to international exchanges to do the altcoin trading and such things. So that pretty much made us to understand, yeah, I think it is time for us to provide the altcoin and exchange opportunities for India as well. So yeah, after getting it to that point, we launched the exchange in 2017, end of 2017 actually. So we launched with Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Ripple, and Stellar.
What about? I can't remember what year this was. You probably remember, but I remember it was a really big event at the time, which was when India was going through its demonetization process. So it was making certain cash denominations illegal, where you had to queue outside the bank with a bag of cash, which is a very dangerous thing to do, and essentially digitize that money and put it in the bank. By a nation of, a percentage of the population that were very skeptical about the banking industry. Could you remind us, like, share a bit about what that was actually like in India, and whether that actually had any kind of impact in educating people on the need for Bitcoin, and whether that led to any increase in your business at the time?
Yeah, so this was, I think, November 2016. So that was a month. So that was, I think, the same day when Trump won the election. So it's the same day in which, during which in India we had the demonetization. So so what the Prime Minister of India declared is that Indian rupee bills, right? So the 500 rupee bill and the 1,000 rupee bill was invalidated, and he was to issue the new set of currency notes through the banks. And this essentially made people to when the only option they had is to take all the money and deposit it to the bank and get it accounted for, where you need to really explain why you are depositing so much of why you are even having so much of money in the bank in your home. So if you see the economy wise, right? So I think from my knowledge, about 95% of the transactions within India even today happen through cash. So it is definitely not a very digital economy yet. So, but this demonetization pushed it to great extent. I think before it used to be about 98%, and now we are at about 95%. Right. So yeah, that made people to just figure out where are all they are hiding the cash, put them all together. Then when you go and deposit into the bank, then it becomes like an accounted money. So you should really have the reason for why you are having that so much of money in the home and not in the bank account, etc. And that is a kind of very, very huge exercise where close to about I think about 14 lakh crores. That's what we call it. I think it could be I don't know. I cannot really convert it into American dollars, but it is like maybe 700 billion or something like that, I guess. I don't know. So that's kind of money that eventually got deposited to the bank account, and then when you want the money back, you had limitations of how much money you can take. So per day it was 2,000 rupees per individual, which means about $30. So that's all one could withdraw for just their living expenses. So every time they had to visit the bank and keep on withdrawing for about a month and a half. So that was a kind of issue that people faced. And then eventually, I think if I have to compare it to right now, how the situation in India is, it's kind of again back to normal. like how the cash transactions used to happen. It's happening. So that was just like one cycle where some of the bad money got accounted for, I guess. So that's how I pretty much say it. But if I have to talk about Bitcoin, right? So see, there are definitely great things that people can associate the Bitcoin to, as compared to the things that has gone wrong in India, has gone wrong in United States, has gone wrong in many other completely centralized economies. But again, I didn't really see the price of Bitcoin significantly going up because of the demonetization. And again, just because India, it definitely was never a really, really huge market for this kind of Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. So it didn't really go up at that point of time. And then again, we had a huge issue in April 2018 when the Reserve Bank of India said that the bank should stop supporting the cryptocurrency.
Let me interrupt you before we get to that one. So we're at 2016. We have this remonetization process. 2017 was when our industry went into a crazy bubble cycle. And there was cryptocurrency after cryptocurrency, there was token after token, there was ICO after ICO, there was scam after scam. Was there any, I know that it was a big contributor to what happened in China with ICOs, was that there was just these ginormous, billion-dollar Ponzi schemes where you had things like Unocoin, where people were buying into these projects, thinking, and the confusion of comparing it to Bitcoin just drove so many people into these absolute outright scams and Ponzi schemes. In 2017, did you experience anything like that? And was that, in your opinion, what led to some of the action that happened in 2018 at the central bank? Or do you think that it was really not necessarily the scams? Was it because Bitcoin was something that a legitimate project, but was it something threatening, or something that they just didn't really know how to deal with? What's your perspective with 2017 and what led to the 2018 decisions?
In 2017, we didn't really see an India itself, or at least not something which are notable ones which have come to my notice. But I definitely can see a lot of our customers who are buying Bitcoin from us and sending it to different ICO projects, or trying to invest into different, the localized Ponzi schemes. And we have equally seen some kind of huge scams happening within India, but definitely not in the terms of multiple billions of dollars, but could be comparatively a smaller check size, I would say. But I think that also has been one of the reasons why the Reserve Bank of India did whatever they did in 2018, because the amount of on one side, if you go to law enforcer saying like I got scammed, right? So then the first question they ask is, how did you send the money? So now we have to say that, okay, I sent the money through the bank account, and this is the bank account to which it was sent. Then there was some kind of legal course. But when I try to say that it was sent to a Bitcoin address, then it is kind of very unrecognized method of doing the transaction in 2016, 17, and 18. So due to which it was kind of getting ignored, and there was kind of no proper legal recourse at all, which made more and more scams to start getting to the surface. And eventually, I think that is one of the reasons why the Reserve Bank of India just came up with a notice saying that, we just cannot continue doing this and letting this happen. So it has to curb at one or the other places. And for them, the easiest way was to restrict the bank accounts for the exchanges like ours, I guess. But yeah, we had our own share of such scams happening in India, which has come to my notice.
Yeah. So walk us through that. We have this almighty bubble, like every exchange is, suffering in terms of trying to onboard new customers. The whole world is trying to get into Bitcoin. And then there was all this confusion of all these alternatives. And, I remember at one stage, one of the exchanges, one of our portfolio companies, Kraken, or I can't remember whether it was Bitfinex, but I think they had a backlog of approximately 50 to 80,000 tickets at one stage when the whole world was just trying to onboard onto this industry. Customer service was just completely disappeared, because no one could keep up, and all of the, the company just had to hire and hire and hire, and everything was growing and no one could move fast enough. And it was just an incredible time. But then suddenly you're going through I'm sure you went through a similar growth curve. You started increasing the number of staff. You started trying to serve your customer better. Everything's growing. Everything's going in the right direction. And then suddenly you get hit with this, well, tell us what happened in 2018. So the Reserve Bank of India then suddenly says, banks, you're no longer allowed to serve anyone associated with cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, so we're talking about the growth curve, right? So then definitely we have to point about the last quarter of 2017 and first quarter of 2018. So even we had about more than 20 days of waiting time for people to get their KYCs verified and get onboarded. And by the time they get onboarded, the price of Bitcoin was significantly different than when they started the process, because 20 days is a way too huge amount of time for any kind of variations to happen. And we were seeing like about $1,000 a jump per day. So like that we had like many days, right? So yeah, that made us to really be on our toes, no matter how much we are trying to hire. There was like customer care services that we extended 24/7. So like nothing was sufficient, and most of the calls is just to ask when will their KYC gets verified so that they can start buying Bitcoin. So that has been like biggest challenge for our customers. And that is also the time when our, say, 2 quarters ago, our team strength was about 50, and at our peak we had it about 140. So it's kind of, we had to go about 3 times, and most of the new guys were just customer care executives trying to help the customers gets onboarded, or to answer why their KYC did not get passed and what they should do to get it passed, right? So that's the kind of growth that we really saw in those particular 6 months. And like I said, the scams also were taking very very good shape in these particular months. So these are also the months when we see IC was booming, right? So because the price of Bitcoin is really high, and people who have invested less on the Bitcoin, and now because the price has gone up, now they look at investing Bitcoin itself as an investment opportunities into different kinds of ICOs and such things. So this eventually made up to the regulators to say that, like, this issue exists in India. It cannot be ignored that the scams are happening, but there is no legal recourse, and our customers are the eventual citizens, right? So are getting scammed out of this. So this definitely would have been one of the triggers why the Reserve Bank of India came up with such kind of notice. And on the other side, if you see, so I was talking about 2013 when we launched the Unocoin platform, right? So to that particular conference, we invited various enforcement agencies and regulators. So we also had representation from Reserve Bank of India at that point of time. And after they went back, within about 4 or 5 days, they came up with a notice saying, look, we don't understand what is this. There are security risks involved, and there are financial risks involved, and only invest or do whatever you want to do. If you know what you're trying to do, kind of warning that reiterated that warning, I think twice again in 2016 and once again in 2017. But in 2018, when things really kind of going out of the hands, the Reserve Bank of India came up with a notice to the banks, which are regulated by them, saying that the bank should immediately stop supporting the cryptocurrency exchanges and the customers. And they just gave like 3 months time to end up all the relationship with the exchanges and customers. So that made at that point of time, there are like 3 or 4 major well-known exchanges, including us. So we lost access to the bank accounts, and the biggest transactions that we were doing, or pretty much every other exchange was doing, is between the fiat currency to cryptocurrency. So like actually onboarding and offboarding, and significantly Bitcoin to rupees and rupees to Bitcoin. So that eventually got like close to 10% of volume, what it used to be, because people could only trade by using the balances on the platform. They could not send money in, and they cannot take money out, right? So that made us to again go for 2 rounds of downsizing. So, and we ended up with about just 20 employees at one point in time. And then that has to be fought at the Supreme Court, which is like the highest court in India. and something that we estimated to take about 8 months or so took about 22 months to get the verdict from them. And just last month on March 4th, the verdict came out saying that, yeah, whatever the notice they have given is unconstitutional, because when crypto is not illegalized in India, then the Reserve Bank of India should not be restricting the bank accounts for people who are doing any kind of cryptocurrency exchanges, or even for the customers actually. So whatever they're doing, it's like the bank account should be provided. So yeah, just after that, we got the access to our bank accounts and to accept the money for doing the trading from the next day onwards. And since then, again, we are back on the kind of growth curve, I guess.
Yeah, let me do a middle piece there as well. So, you're at your peak stage, you've got your peak staff, you've got peak revenue. Suddenly this event happens that you have absolutely no control over. But you did mention that you started to build relationships with the authorities way back in 2013. And then suddenly this event happens. One of the reactions, I remember your co-founder that he had to leave for Kraken eventually, because while you had to take these costs down to try and keep the business alive.
Yep.
I remember an interview where you were talking about, well, okay, if we can't serve through banks, there's no official announcement that Bitcoin's illegal or anything like that, as far as we know. So you started to innovate, and this really has been the story of Unocoin, that no matter what you're faced with, you continue, you push, you innovate. So you decided to look at, well, what if what other markets can we do? So you looked at the cash to Bitcoin market, and you started to look at whether you could build a network of Bitcoin ATMs around India. And then suddenly this crazy event happens. Walk us through, your thinking and what happened after that.
Yeah, so just after the banks said no, they cannot provide the accounts for us to accept money from our customers and give money back to customers. On one side, we are trying to fight this at the Supreme Court, but there are so much of our customers who are there was no way for them to take the money out of the system. And there are still so many customers who wanted to invest into Bitcoin, because in 2018 and 19 we saw like a very bearish market for Bitcoin, where some people obviously would get in at that point of time. So and those times, like you pretty much have everything except the bank account, and you have the customers, and you have all pieces in place. It's just like you still are not able to kind of service them. So we thought, because anyway, the Indian market, if you see, like I said, 95% of the transactions happen in cash. So which we took it as a clue that what we should be doing next. So one method we could have countered this is to have various branch offices where people could deposit cash and withdraw cash. And again, in India, there are cash limitations of how much cash can be transacted per day and per month per customer basis. But yeah, so according to that, whatever we could do, we thought of doing. But to have that kind of physical locations, it kind of significantly adds to the to providing the security of that kind of cash that we are collecting and dispersing, right? So which was kind of did not really make sense. And then there's a dependency on that human who is taking care of these kinds of huge deposits and huge amount of money. So that gave rise to the idea that why don't we do the same thing like what banks does? So for example, whenever customers of the bank need to deposit money or withdraw money, they can just walk into an ATM. So all we could do is to take the similar ATM, and instead of connecting it to their banking network, it will be connected to our servers, the Unocoin servers. And this will be capable of accepting the money from our customers and also dispersing the money to our customers. Initially, we called it as Unocoin ATM, and then because of a lot of confusion that happened in media, we named it as Unocoin Kiosk. But as far as the Reserve Bank of India is concerned, they have a definition of ATM, which actually says that it is a machine, automated machine that is connected to the banking network, blah, blah, blah things. And our definition of the machine that we were installing definitely did not fit any kind of definition any kind of definition from Reserve Bank of India. And it was purely for cash collection and disbursement from our company. That's pretty much all these machines were trying to do. But on the other side, the law enforcers, because of the lot of confusion created by media, and initially we called it as an ATM, so this created a lot of confusion among the enforcers as well, who started to think that we are trying to install a ATM which needs the permission from Reserve Bank, but we don't have the permission from Reserve Bank, and they try to figure out like various ways, and they kind of then had to take us into the custody so that we can explain what exactly it means. So we had to spend about 2 days there, and we had to go from the basics of Bitcoin to the issue we faced with the Reserve Bank, and how this innovative thing can kind of at least solve the present problem. It took them about 2 days, but then we had to get out of the custody. But that particular event, world news, I guess. So it kind of said it's like innovation behind bars, or various exciting headlines. But eventually, yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. But on one side, I think that also made a lot of people aware of like what is possible, what is not possible, and we had to keep on pushing for the Supreme Court Supreme Court case, so that we finally end up with a verdict, so that we can get back on track. So it's a kind of story there.
So you go through this extreme ordeal, you make an incredibly successful company, in a controversial area, Bitcoin, and you go through these boom markets. You then have this, hit by the banks, essentially the completely takes out your business. Then you innovate further. You end up building, what you thought was a completely legitimate ATM structure. You spend two nights in custody. What then suddenly your revenues are dropping. There's no profitability left. Your reserves are going down and down and down.
Yeah.
You're obviously taking off more and more. Unfortunately, it's costing your team more and more jobs. Mm-hmm. What kept you going when, this period of when the ban happened to the more recent announcement where you got your banking back? How long was that period?
Yeah, it was 22 months fight. It took about 22 months from filing the complaint, or trying to put the case against Reserve Bank of India, to getting the verdict. Is a 22 months wait in total. So
what was it that kept you going in that time? Why was it, that you just continued to go? And what is it? It just seems so unlikely that the result that was going to go in the way that you wanted it to go. Yet you never stopped believing. What was that?
Yeah, I think it is because it is Bitcoin, right? So, and it is India losing on Bitcoin. And at one point of time, when India did not have an opportunity to participate in Bitcoin, I have put together the company, and the new players. So there are a couple of new companies which actually have already shut down. So there was one company called CoinX which had shut down already, and there was another company called Zeppay which had to move their base to Malta, stop their services within India. And we were kind of only one of we were the only old player who had so much of huge customer base and customer funds with us, and we always pushed forward to say that, if everywhere else it is successful, it has to be successful in India as well on one or the other day. And the confidence that was given by our lawyers that whatever doing, that they will be able to succeed in the case, etc. And pretty much also the confidence that we were getting from our customers, from our family, from the rest of the co-founders, etc. So, and we did not really foresee that to take about 22 months. We kind of realized that things are really getting delayed by about 4 or 5 quarters already. But we kind of already, it is like seeing how long we have already come before we see how long more to go ahead. I think that's what kind of kept us keep waiting and fighting to get it through.
Yeah. People often ask me, having invested in so many different companies in the industry, what is it that you actually look for? And the first thing is, I've made some really bad investments. I've made some really good investments. Some of those have gone on to be unicorns. Many of those have gone on to go bust. But the thing that really, I think stands out is that throughout this whole journey, you were continually giving those investor updates. You were keeping investors along, and you were never, ever going to give up. There was nothing that was going to stop you from making this happen despite all of the adversity. And really, I see we haven't been through the same journey, a Bank to the Future, but there's been so many times when we could have just given up, and so many people would have given up. Yet we, as the oldest company in crypto now, we just continue. And really, it's a pleasure to be an investor in a company whereby there is such a big importance in the mission, so much belief in what you're doing, that you'll always find a way or make a way, whatever that is. And everyone, I don't think anyone would have, I don't think anyone would have blamed you if you had given up in this time. I know that we certainly wouldn't have, because it just looked like there was no way through this. But I think that's just an incredible story. So let's go straight to, where we are today. So you get this announcement that you've been doing all this work. Your lawyers have been, I don't know what the process with what your lawyers were actually doing, but suddenly something happens. I open up one day and I read in CoinDesk or the news that Bitcoin's back in India. What happened? How did that happen?
Yeah, so we formed an association. We were like 4 exchanges at that point in time, and the issue happened. So we had pulled in some money and paid it to an association who will arrange the required lawyers and fight against this particular notice at the Supreme Court. So there was, at least for first year and a half, which is like 18 months. So all that happens is just paperwork. It is not like arguments of the court that will happen. It is just about one party submitting papers or the explanation to other party, and then there is another hearing after 1 year, 1 month, where the other party submits such kind of document saying like why they think this is wrong, etc. So that kind of paperwork itself took about 18 months or so, and only during the last 6 months we have actually seen the arguments happening. And also have to highlight here that the arguments this time at the Supreme Court, interested to learn about whatever has been said, and what is trying to understand what is happening in the rest of the world. So there were continuous days, like full days, given only to our case to hear about the agony, like why whatever they did is wrong. So that's what we had to explain, and they had to explain why whatever they did is right. So that kind of it came to that extent pretty much by November 2019, and since then we had enough number of dates, very frequent dates, where we could explain about like how there is about 80 different countries stance was taken, and there were so India is one of the like very highly regulated countries, so they really had to see about what kind of regulations the cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin is already violating, and what is the legal recourse for it, etc. So it's kind of very, very exhaustive study has been made by those judges as we continue to argue about why something is right and why something is wrong. So eventually, they took about 1 extra month, and they have come up with the judgment, which is about 180 pages long. That pretty much explains various aspects of what all they have considered, and why they think, why they strongly believe that the industry is right and not the Reserve Bank of India. Right, and they gave out a verdict saying that eventually the thing they only had to say was the notice given by RBI is invalid. That's pretty much all the verdict. But the reason why they want that is kind of a 180-page long document, and it had to take so much of hearings, so much by multiple people to make it happen.
Yeah, we're sorry for the internet connection. We're trying to get through it, but I don't think there's much we can do. But so in 2019, you beat the central bank. We're now in 2020. You come back along, you manage to survive this ordeal. The bank account gets opened again.
Mhm.
Boom! Suddenly we get the biggest, what looks like might be entering into the biggest recession we've seen for 100 odd years or 70 years. 90 odd years, the 30s. We have a global pandemic. And from my perspective, I think that that Bitcoin has a role in this world, in the world that we seem to be entering in right now. So what are you actually seeing right now? So, we've got this crazy scenario where probably a quarter of the world is about to lose their jobs. We've got this, this very unfortunate health crisis situation. And yet Unocoin is ready to hire, to grow, to raise additional funding, because my personal perspective, after 7 years of seeing the Unocoin journey, it is now in the right place at the right time to take advantage of an incredible opportunity. If people really believe in Bitcoin, in the current markets, from my perspective, this is the time when Bitcoin shows what it can do and really becomes an important force for so many people. Many of the exchanges that we're seeing is they're seeing really high volumes of new onboarding. We're investors in many different exchanges, but new money is definitely entering this market. So what are we seeing in India right now? So we're going to be doing a pitch at Bank to the Future to contribute. So you've reached out to all your existing investors. You're in negotiations with those. As soon as those negotiations are through, the valuation is set. Then for us, it's a no-brainer to support you in seeing what we can top up through Bank to the Future. Some of our investors are in very challenging situations through this health crisis, but many of them are sat at home, really thinking about investments and what they're going to do and what the future looks like. So, but how do you feel about the environment? How do you feel about Bitcoin right now? And how do you feel, what is it that Bitcoin can do for India in the current situation?
I think, see, whatever the world is facing since this last 2 months is kind of very similar scenario we faced as an industry in India for 2 years, right? So it's kind of, everything is kind of going wrong. Then there is not enough revenues. You have to let go of people, and you continue to fight at the court saying that whatever you are trying to do is right. So it was kind of like a it at least looked like a never-ending story for many months. And only after the argument started, which we knew to be the last phase of the court hearings, we kind of had some kind of visibility that, okay, this is going to end in about 6 months or so. So there's a kind of thing. But if I have to compare, right, so the year 2018 and 19 to what we are right now, I have to say that we are more happy to have the customers to whom we are able to service, to have more employees who will somewhat have the livelihood right now, and we are kind of hiring because we just have the verdict about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and now we are continued to be in the hiring mode to get more and more developers onboarded and more customer care executives onboarded, etc. So at least I think our Indian cryptocurrency industry is one of the very few industries, I think, at least as far as I know, the cryptocurrency industry, where it's kind of happy at this point of time. And given everything, whatever we do is kind of online, so that makes it not too tough to manage everything from home. Is what I really think. And actually going forward as well. One thing I can say here is we couldn't really understand the Indian cryptocurrency market within the last 4 weeks, because these are only 4 weeks we got since the verdict. But because of the pandemic, we couldn't really understand what the ground reality is within India. And it could take about another month or two, within which we'll again start understanding like where exactly the industry stands. But on the other side, like we were talking about the price fluctuations for whatever things happening in India, right? So when the demonetization happened, I did see the price of Bitcoin going up. When the RBI came up with the notice in April 2018, I didn't see the price of Bitcoin going down. And again, when we saw Supreme Court slashing down that particular notice, I still did not see the price of Bitcoin going up. So which actually means somewhat that for the rest of the world, or at least for the traders, whatever is happening within India is not like really significant, because we never got a very good chance, like how China got at one point of time, Russia got at one point of time, US got one point of time, where there were so many people. It was like a huge herd trying to invest into Bitcoin, and like they continue to be the investors, right? So it's not like they will empty their pockets or one shot. But we never got that kind of that kind of time where the support that was given to the cryptocurrency exchanges and the market support, because it's like booming market, etc. So all of them have to kind of, and there should be some kind of use case. It could be ICOs, or it could be whatever we can think of, or that the economy of the rest of that country is really going down in such a way that people are turning towards Bitcoin. So I think one of those people India, where we will see say millions and millions of people entering into this particular space, and only then I think the Indians, whatever is happening in India will have some kind of effect on the price of the Bitcoin or anything that is happening in the crypto market. So so it's kind of due, I guess. So pretty much the next country which could really see that maybe India, given the roadblocks are kind of cleared up right now, and just the pandemic that exists, and it should definitely clear up in a month or two. I think after that it will be the turn of India, I guess.
Yes, so certainly from my perspective, it's the original investment theses 7 years on, starting over again. So I've hogged the whole show. We're meant to do 1 hour on this. Famida, is there any questions that have come up, because we're nearing towards the end of the hour?
Yeah, like 2 minutes actually, Simon.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I just find this story so interesting.
It's been years. It's been years, hasn't it? When was it that Unocoin went live on Bank to the Future? It was like 2015, right?
2015.
It's been years. Yeah. So this has been a long time coming, of course. There have been a few questions that came through. One I would just like to pull out is from Gustavo. I think I'm pronouncing it the best way I can. I wonder, does Sathvik see Bitcoin in India as a cross-border payment more than a store of value?
Yeah, so India is one of the biggest inward remitters for money across the world, right? So due to which, and like I said in my own story, I was losing about 7% of the money by using PayPal as a mode of transaction, and that is like a lot of money. But if I have to see Middle East to some of the states, like Kerala is one of the states in India, so where a significant amount of people go to the Middle East to work, and they send money every week or every 2 weeks. And Singapore is one of the other destinations where a lot of Indians go for work and then send the money. So, and some of them are using Western Union, and some have some other kind of arrangements to send the money, right? Cheap 5%, get the money into the India and to the hands of their family. So that eventually give rise to a question that it definitely is there. There definitely is a very good use case. But again, how the cross-border remittances get treated as far as the compliance and regulations is concerned, if we keep that question aside for time being, because it's kind of unregulated for time being right now. So definitely this has a very good use case. There are freelancers who are getting paid in India, and there are families which are getting paid by the head of the family from wherever he is working, etc. So it's significantly, it's a really good use case, I think. Yeah.
They also had another side question as well. I was wondering if there are reliable independent crypto education centers or projects or anything in India.
Yeah, so right now it is, I don't really see any project only dedicated towards educating about crypto to the market. but every exchange is doing their piece, and there are various firms which are putting together a small budget, which is more targeted to educate about the cryptocurrencies. But on the other side, if I have to compare between 2014 and 15, where I had to spend more than an hour to explain about what is Bitcoin and how it works to the person who is asking the questions again and again, right? But right now, I think the media has done a very good job of explaining what is Bitcoin and how it works. Sometimes the bad light and sometimes the good light, but eventually, at least the information has is very far, very frequently reaching the Indian citizens. And we from Unocoin as well, we have a portal called Unoversity, Unoversity.com. So where we have chapters that we have written about Bitcoin. It could be about Ethereum, it could be crypto assets in general and how the blockchain works, etc. And we kind of could not keep on adding articles because of the lack of resources for last some 6-7 quarters. But again, we are reviving all of the things which did not work so far. So just today, customers now are able to top up their mobile phones like prepaid and postpaid and DTH connections. So the next one we have in our pipeline is to get the merchants onboarded, so who are accepting Bitcoin as mode of payment. And just after that, like whatever we had to let go of in between. So we are kind of getting them onboarded. And yeah, so this is like one of them as well, which will eventually become live and active.
Well, actually, one thought, well, actually just a constant thought that I've had, Sathvik, actually, I went on to Google and just double check, is Bitcoin or crypto legal in India? And I know India has many states, right? It's like 30 or something states. So it will change varying to different states or whatever, if it does become legal or illegal. But then also I saw that exchanges are legal, but crypto isn't legal. So
it's definitely not so. So it is not like US where the law is different for different states. So pretty much all the states fall under the same law and regulation. There are some kind of little differences in regulation to make it work for that particular state, but definitely there is nothing which is distinguishing the stance of one state on cryptocurrency to another state on crypto. So there hasn't been any such kind of modification that has already been passed at. So the cryptocurrency, the platforms, brokerages like us, exchanges like us, so they definitely do not fall under any kind of legal restrictions, as in to make it like it is outlawed in the country or anything like that. So does the customers who are already trying to do any kind of trading activities for the time being. So it is kind of unregulated. And if I have to compare, there is so many startups which continue to work without the complete regulation, because in India, usually the business happens first and then the regulation comes. We at least lack by 4 or 5 years as compared to United States or any other developed countries to come up with regulation. So that exactly what happened for payment gateways as well, online payment gateways. So for us to get that kind of regulation, it took like a lot of time. And the recent regulation that we had in India was for peer-to-peer lending. So as compared to other countries, we at least are lagging by 4 or 5 years, I guess. So eventually, I think for cryptocurrencies as well, there will be some kind of regulation, but it's very unlikely that it will say that, okay, it is not allowed, or it will just maintain the status quo of unregulated for time being. And that is so in pretty much rest of the world as well. I think more than 90% of the countries do not have the complete regulation for crypto. It is just like, as of now, they continue to work under unregulated conditions, but try to make sure as much as possible that they try to play safe. And that's exactly what we do as
well. So actually that just got me thinking about KYC and what Back to the Future have gone through over the last few years, like with third-party processors with the fiat currencies and then KYC for that investor or user. It has been really tricky, and I was just wondering, like, obviously there are some countries in South Asia where it is difficult to get a passport, and some companies with their regulations or AML regimes that they have, are making it difficult for people to invest because they don't have a passport. So how has this affected you over the years?
In India, we do something called self-regulation. So what I mean by that is, so when we started Unocoin, we had fantastic lawyers with us, who we continue to have the lawyers even right now. So they're called Nishit Desai Associates. So we drafted something called a self-regulation of how we should onboard the customers. And now that has kind of become like a standard for the rest of the industry. So everyone who have followed to have their companies kind of work on very similar lines of however, we started our company. And since day one, we have always made sure, and since day one, whatever were the KYC norms, even today we keep it the same, because we kind of have applied the most, very strict possible norms. And we also made sure that every transaction that is happening between our customer to us is always through the bank account. So even if we fail to identify any kind of anomalies, then at least at the bank account level, there's always making sure that it gets through, right? So and there are various practices we have done. So where, let's say, if there is a non-Indian IP address trying to access the platform, like how it should work, and if there is the same amount of Bitcoin that is trying to be withdrawn multiple times, how it should work, and if there are multiple customers trying to withdraw Bitcoin at the same time in a similar amounts, and how it should work. So there are like various algorithms that we have put in place, which will kind of monitor itself and flag such kind of transactions without processing it, so that there is always an administrator who will look at it and kind of approve that. So these are all like various steps that we have taken. It is not like it is required to be done, but it is just for the interest of our own company and for the interest of our customers, and to make sure we have thought about such things, and we have taken some kind of steps whenever the regulators questions us. So these are the things that we have we made sure to put in place, and have helped us since then till today to make sure that be able to kind of sail through this kind of highly regulated country within India, and still keep the business going, still onboard the customers without not even a single incidents that we have faced where we kind of don't have or have the wrong KYC of the customers, and have someone has utilized our platform to do something wrong. So yeah, there's a kind of very strict KYC and AML norms that we have. And this has made more or less more than 40% of the KYC verification documents fail our tests. And there's always it's a manual step, so where it's not like completely automated. So where there is always a manual account manager who always checks the KYC documents and gets it through. So even when we had to make our customers wait for 20 days, we still continued keeping it manual instead of automating it, because we didn't really want a day when we don't have an answer for someone's question. So that's what we say.
Yeah, we went through something similar, right, Simon?
Yeah.
One from John H. Is Bank to the Future going to release a new round?
Absolutely, yeah, we can't wait. We're currently, Unocoin is negotiating with the lead investors right now. The way that we do this is the lead investor will set the valuation. Unocoin will go through the DD process with, and I know Unocoin has had, he's in touch with some, they're in touch with some high profile investors at the moment. The second that valuation is set, we've already signed an agreement. We'll be going through our DD process, and then we'll be getting that pitch ready to go live, and we can't wait to support this. From my perspective, Sathvik is a truly inspirational entrepreneur, and I think it's the people behind these companies that really make or break these companies. So, one of the reasons I'm kind of a big fan of companies like Bitfinex is because so many things have gone wrong for them, and they've always bounced back. And I think it makes the companies really, really strong. And so with Unocoin, so many things has happened to Unocoin, and they just keep bouncing back. So we look to support that, and hopefully our investors see this as an opportunity. I still personally myself believe that Bitcoin is in its infancy in India, and it's got so much to offer India. And so I can't wait to see and support that. And if it takes a long time, it takes a long time. But this is something that's really important. I still think that companies like Unocoin have got so much further to go, and we'd like to support them on that journey.
Yeah, I think India is. I mean, I've always believed that India is one of the best markets. See, for US, they have more stable currency, right? So it is not so in India because the value keeps on fluctuating as compared to the US dollar. So in India, it's kind of there is the average age of Indian today is about 29 years as compared to say Italy, which is like 44 or something like that. So which means I'm trying to say it's like very young population within India. And also India is one of it's called Silicon Valley of the East, so which actually is like there's so much IT crowd here. On the other side, we have the gold. It's a gold-loving country, so where the individuals actually hold the gold as one of the investors, and it is one of the biggest inward remitters in the world. So these things, if you put together, I think it's very evident that the cryptocurrencies, or at least the Bitcoin, will definitely have a dream run. Just about the rest of the conditions also set in such a way that it can take off. So I believe it should definitely be the country, probably the next country where we will see that kind of dream run.
I have one more question.
Sure.
And it's from Stacey Herbert. Will the new round dilute early investors? How does this impact Bitcoin Capital's investment?
Yeah, valuation. So I'll give the bank to the future answer. When you issue more equity in the future, then it always dilutes existing investors. But the path of a company is to always try and increase the valuation so that the dilution in terms of number of shares is compensated for by the increase in the share price. Now, obviously, Unocoin has been through, they were at a growth path, and now they are where they are in recovery mode and relaunch. So do you have a valuation at this point? Do you think it's going to be an up round, a down round, same thing, or is that still in negotiations?
I think we pretty much may have the round which is equivalent to the post-money valuation of the last round. So more or less, the investors who are coming now can see it as a top-up from the last round because it will be more or less the same valuation. But it is just like more money getting into the company, right? So it will just again dilute the present investors. Probably, so every round is known to dilute about 20-25% of the holdings for everyone. So we may more or less see the same thing this particular round as well. But as far as the valuation goes, because it's the recovery mode and it's kind of dull time, it's kind of recession everywhere. So these things may not allow us to really have a very great valuation, but we'll have to see what we'll eventually end up with. But I would be happy to see maybe even 1.5x of our last round investment, right? So we were at about 7 million pre-money and 9 million post-money was the valuation last round. So something like 1.5x could really help us for being continue to pushing it through, I guess.
Yeah. So psychologically, I was preparing for Unocoin to be worth nothing. So for me, to take the dilution and have the ability for Unocoin to just pull off this story of the impossible is really, and when investing in private companies, where we require all our investors to take a quiz, pass the quiz, and one of the questions is about understanding that dilution is likely and to expect it when the company is succeeding as well. But when company has situations like what Unocoin has been, sometimes that can lead to a down round or same valuation, which means that you get additional dilution, which is a risk, but it's about trying to turn it around and increase that valuation from here using the funds that come through. I've got one more if I can, because we have gone over. And speaking of the dollar and the stable currency, is there going to be a digital rupee? What's happening there with in the day and age of insane monetary and fiscal policies globally, are we going to see a digital currency come out of the Central Bank of India?
So from Central Bank of India, yeah, there's definitely a possibility, but I don't think we will have any equivalent of USDT or anything like that. Right. So someone issued by a private person or an entity, it's very unlikely to succeed within India. But if it has to be from the Reserve Bank of India, which is like monetary authority in India, there's definitely a possibility that they can come up with something like that. But on the other side, if I have to compare the infrastructure for doing the transactions within India, I think we are actually doing very, very well as compared to even the developed countries, because every transaction happening through the credit card will need the 2FA through the OTP sent through SMS, and there is a mode called UPI, so which is like instantaneous money transfer from any bank to any bank account. It's like very close to zero transaction fees, and we have something called NEFT, and there's something called real-time gross settlement. So there are multiple protocols available within India which are both instantaneous and close to zero fees. So given that, what is a new advantage that such kind of blockchain-based token can just bring to the Indian citizens? Except that now it is allowed to do transactions between any two individuals on the earth, not just within India. Right, so that's exactly what blockchain and Bitcoin is there for. So within India, I cannot see what advantage they would get by releasing a token.
Well, yeah, I think the main thing is a funding mechanism in a time when India is taking loans from the World Bank. It still has the opportunity to fund health and infrastructure, with its own digital currency, depending on what policies it's actually following. And obviously, you need to be considerate of not destroying your currency at the same time. But that's what we're seeing all around the world: record levels of new money forms being created in order to fund essential infrastructure in these times. So you have the choice of doing that or taking the loan from the World Bank. So I think we're over on time. Do you want to comment on that one?
Yeah, so India definitely will not be the first country to launch such kind of token or digital currency by the regulatory itself, right? So we probably, after there are numerous examples from around the world, and after seeing those countries succeed in whatever they're trying to do, then only I think the India would even consider doing that. So it's unlikely we will be the one who will innovate and try to figure it out. It's unlikely.
Okay. So unless, Famida, you got more questions, I think this is a good time to wrap it up. And that's going to do it for episode 55 of Bank to the Future Live. Thank you very much for taking the time out. I'm sorry if the internet was a bit painful, but unfortunately we couldn't get that to work out. But I think we got the essence of the story. I think it's a fascinating story, and I look forward to seeing where this goes in the years ahead, and just excited to be a part of that as well. So thanks, Famida, for bringing out those questions, and thanks, Sathvik, for bringing us your time.
Thank you, Simon. Thanks for organizing it through Bank to the Future. Thank you.
Bye-bye.